whether it will make it law that Fidel Castro's name not be put on figures or on buildings or on structures in Cuba. So I think speaking to the legacy, speaking to the revolutionary that is so admired in many parts of the world, particularly in Africa and in largely the developing world.
Now, Sherwin, staying with the conversations between the Castro brothers, we know that this is the end of an era. Castro ruled for 49 years and now his brother for a decade. What will happen post the Castro brothers in terms of leadership in Cuba?
Well, Timberley, I think we can actually talk about, the Castro dynasty that will be passing the baton on, if you will, to a younger generation. We hear that within the Communist Party here in Cuba, there is talk about, capping the age for leadership positions within the government at around 70 years old. Of course, Raul Castro himself, 86 years old. And I think a recognition that perhaps the older generation has done its bit, if you will. They've succeeded in the revolution. They've provided free healthcare. They've socialized Cuba. And now perhaps it's time for a different vision, a time for new energy in those decision-making corridors. And as you know, Cuba is on the cusp of something big. This is a sponge that needs to soak up so much. I mean, if you look behind me, you see some of the infrastructure here in Cuba. It's crumbling. It's in need of a lick of paint. Roads are in decay. So there's a lot of work to be done as Cuba opens up to the rest of the world. Of course, you'll remember that President Zuma led a delegation back in 2010 when the talk about Cuba opening up economically to the rest of the world began. South Africa at the front of the herd, if you will, that is looking to invest here, bringing high-powered delegations here. Of course, an important meeting in 2010 that was followed up in 2015, in December last year, by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. So Cuba is on the cusp of something big, but one of the biggest impediments that continues to this day, as you will well know, is the U.S. embargo, the economic blockade that still makes doing business in Cuba quite difficult. And as you've seen over the last number of months, the rapprochement led by President Barack Obama of the United States, but he can only do so much. Of course, President-elect Trump will have to take over, and we've heard a number of interesting things that he has said, that he will be seeking further concessions from the Cuban government if that rapprochement between the United States and Cuba is to continue.
Sherwin, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for that update. That was our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease joining us from Havana, Cuba, for that final farewell of Fidel Castro. Now in South Africa, Cuban engineers working with the Department of Water and Sanitation have also celebrated the life of Fidel.